Hi, and welcome to the PWLC Kitchen. So we're going to start a video series just kind of teaching you how to cook, showing you some of our favorite tips and tricks in the kitchen, as well as sharing with you some of our favorite recipes, ways to stay metabolically healthy, cooking tips 101, just kind of everything under the sun. So we're coming to you here from the PWLC Kitchen, and this is what we're going to be cooking with. It's just like an indoor Ninja grill. But if you have something different at home, obviously everybody isn't going to have this. This is more just a portability function for us. But you can use an outdoor grill and get the same effect. You can also use a cast iron skillet on your stove. You could bake your food. I mean, you've got a ton of different options. So we just want to work with whatever is available to you. So today what we're going to be cooking is we're going to start with Dr. Blue's, one of his favorites, and it's going to be a lemon rosemary chicken and some kale chips. So we're going to start with the lemon chicken. All right, so we have just one chicken breast here. Of course, you could adjust this recipe to meet your family's needs. But what we're going to start doing with the chicken breast, we've already kind of trimmed it of the fat. If you're not familiar with what that means, just cut off all of the yucky yellow stuff that's on there. We're going to put a little bit of this avocado oil on the top. This is one that we actually sell here in our store. It's the Primal Kitchen brand. And I'll just kind of give you a little tip. The reason we use the avocado oil actually has a really high, what they call smoke point. And basically what that means, if you put the oven on 400 degrees Fahrenheit, it's not going to create a whole lot of smoke. Versus olive oil, which you may commonly use, olive oil is going to smoke pretty quickly at high temperatures. And so that's one of the reasons why we use the avocado oil. Also, it has all of those good health benefits that avocados have for you. Okay, so we've got that done. Next, what we're going to do, we're going to add this spice. It's going to be the Lemon Rosemary Sea Salt from the Salt Spice Store. So if you are local to Amarillo, that will be familiar to you. So like I said, Lemon Rosemary Sea Salt, you can get it locally. If you are not local to Amarillo, you could just combine probably some lemon on the chicken, a little bit of rosemary, a little bit of sea salt. You'll get the same effect. Okay, so we're going to actually be pretty generous with the seasoning. It's not a super salty taste, so for those of you who are worried about that, don't have to worry. And I'm just going to do it on the top, okay? And then I'm just going to squeeze a little bit of extra lemon on top there, just to give it a little extra flavor. All right, so we've got our chicken breast, and so now we're just going to put it in the Ninja grill. So if you don't have one of these, you're just going to be cooking in an oven probably around 350 for about 15 minutes or so. If you're doing it in your cast iron, you'll basically just be able to tell whenever it's done. I would just do it on kind of a medium heat. But if you're doing it in the Ninja grill, you turn it on and then hit function until it goes over to grill, and then you can hit this thermometer. And the thermometer allows you to put it into the chicken, and then you can cook it based upon the temperature chicken should be cooked at. So let's see, 165, that is actually where we want it to do. So we're gonna go ahead and hit start. And then I'm gonna go ahead and get this put into our chicken breast. So it's gonna preheat. And if you're putting it into the chicken breast, you just wanna put it horizontally, just like that. Okay, and while our grill is preheating, I'm going to go ahead and show you how we're going to prep the kale. So I've already done most of it, so it's going to come in a really big bunch. But what we want to do is we want to get rid of that center part. So I'm just going to kind of show you with this one. So of course, first, go ahead and wash the kale. That's already been done here. And then this little rib here in the center is something that we want to get rid of. Number one, doesn't taste good. Number two, it's a pretty tough texture. So we want to get rid of that. And so what I would suggest doing, grab your knife, and you just kind of cut along the edges of that ribbing. Okay, and it's going to leave you with this. And then just do the same exact thing to the other side. Okay, so you'll have the rib that's left over, and this is the part that we just want to trash. Okay, the rest of it here, what you're first going to do is go ahead and pat it dry. You don't want any of that excess moisture that can actually make it pretty soggy whenever you cook it. So make sure you pat it dry really well. Okay, and then kind of just tear it into pretty large sections. This is actually a fairly small section, but it was a small leaf. So pull it into pretty small sections, or I'm sorry, pretty large sections. Add that to the rest of it. Okay, if you've got a piece that's already into a small section, not a problem. It'll just be a smaller chip. Okay, and then just like that. Okay, what we're going to add to this, we're going to drizzle it with a healthy dosing of avocado oil. Be generous. Okay, so it's going to give you that nice shine on the oil or on the leaves. And the next thing that you want to do, I think this is possibly the key to making kale chips that taste good. You actually want to go ahead and massage that olive oil in. So just kind of run your fingers through. My hands are clean. I went and washed them after the chicken. Okay, run your hands through and really just kind of start massaging that oil in. Make sure every piece is heavily coated with the avocado oil. And if you're curious what massaging a plant looks like, okay, this is what you're doing. You just kind of take it in your fingers and do this. It kind of helps to bring out a little bit of the bitterness in the cooking. So that's just kind of what I'm doing here. Okay, so next step for the kale chips is we're going to add a little bit of pink Himalayan salt. Again, we bought this from the store Salt, local here in Amarillo in Wolfen Village, but you could also just use your own pink Himalayan salt. You could use flake salt, just whatever you like. Okay, a generous dosing of that as well. I just put it kind of on the top, and then I'm also going to go ahead and just kind of mix it in. That way you don't have all of the salt on one chip. Okay, and here we are. These are ready. All right, our Ninja Grill has beeped at us and it says add food. So we're going to go ahead and add, it's basically the equivalent of your thing has been preheated. Okay. And that nice sear. I'm going to close the lid. And it's basically just going to let us know when the temperature, the internal temperature reaches 165 degrees. All right, so while the chicken is cooking, which is going to take about 10 minutes, just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about when this meal might be appropriate. So if you are more than 8 weeks out from your surgery, you're welcome to have it. But this chip that we're going to make with the kale, it is going to be a little bit crispy. So you'll probably want to wait until about week 6 or 7 to start eating this. The chicken, however, you can start having as soon as you are on your soft protein diet, which is going to be 3 weeks after surgery. You're just going to want to make sure that you take the chicken breast, cut it into small pieces before you actually start biting into it. And this would basically be a really balanced meal. So what we've got our protein from our chicken. We've added a little bit of salt, a little bit of seasonings on top. That's really doesn't account for anything. And then here we're going to have our veggie, our fiber, and then we also have our fat. So that's going to be the avocado oil that we added on top. And so this is a super balanced meal. If you're maybe a little bit further out, you know, like post-op 1 or 2 years, maybe 5 years, you may need to add a little bit of something else to it. That's totally up to you. You could do an additional vegetable. You could do like a cold salad. You could do like a mixed greens. You could do a little bit of asparagus. I mean, really whatever you wanted, even a little bit of sweet potato, something like that. So that would make this a more complete meal for you if this isn't necessarily going to fill you up, but I have a feeling it is. So we have a good question. What would one serving of this be like before you cook it? The crazy thing about greens, kale, spinach, anything similar to that, it's going to cook down pretty significantly. And so what I would say is actually a serving of this pre-cooked is actually probably going to be about half of this. You can maybe do a little bit less, maybe like a third, just kind of depending on how far out from surgery you are. But if you're a little bit further out, about half of this is going to be what I would consider to be close to maybe a cup of the finished product. So this is an entire like bunch of kale that we got. So you can pretty easily eat like the whole thing if you wanted to. Like if it was just going to be your snack, you could very easily just kind of chow down on this entire thing. And it really, you wouldn't really be getting like a whole lot. But as you can see, it seems like that in the beginning whenever you're starting off. Our chicken breast is probably close to like a 6-ounce chicken breast. So for if you've had bariatric surgery, you're probably going to have about half of that per meal. So that might be a really good option, is you could do about half of the chicken breast and then half of the kale chips. Or, you know, kind of depending on how far out you are, you can adjust that a little bit, but that would be my suggestion. All right, so our chicken is ready. One thing you'll notice, if you do have the Ninja grill, it'll beep at you and tell you to flip it when it's about halfway finished. I didn't, which I think is totally fine. Ooh, it looks absolutely delicious. Okay, here we are. All right. So one important thing as far as, you know, like actually tasting your meat, I know you may want to dig right in, but we do actually want to wait, let it rest about 5 minutes. What that does is it allows the chicken to kind of soak up all of the juices if you do that before you cut it. And so we're just going to let this sit here for about 5 minutes while we go ahead and do the kale chips. And then after that, this will be ready to cut into and enjoy. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to use the air frying function on this Ninja grill. If you don't have an air fryer, that's okay. You can also cook it in your oven, 375 or 400. If you do it in the oven, it's going to take about probably 20 or 30 minutes. You'll just want to keep an eye on it, kind of starting at that 20-minute mark. It'll start to kind of shrivel up and be a little bit brown on the edges, and that's when you know it's finished. But in the air fryer, if you have one at home, 375 for about 4 minutes. And basically, we're just going to toss it straight in there. Kind of want to create just a layer of the kale on the bottom, so you may have to do it in a couple different batches. Okay, there we go, ready for our first batch. And it started. So I was just telling somebody else, if you've ever tried kale chips before and they did not taste good, one thing, even after you've cut that rib out of the middle, one thing that you may notice is that some of the leaves still have a pretty big rib in them as well. So like this one here has a pretty big rib. What you can do is just tear that rib out, and then that's going to make it less bitter for you as well. So you can maybe try that too as another little tip. Okay, so I put the kale in a little bit before it preheated since it was already hot, and so it's pretty much ready. So the way you can tell when it's ready, let me just grab one to kind of show you. Hopefully I won't break it. Pulling it out. Okay, you can kind of see that it'll start to brown around the edges, it just getting crispy. Okay, and that was about half of our bunch of kale. So you can see it shrunk down quite a bit. I'm gonna go ahead and cook the second half. There we go. 4 minutes. Okay, so while that other kale is cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and cut into the chicken, and then we're gonna try the kale. As you all may know, if you listen to our podcast, I'm a texture eater, so I'm gonna have this delicious end piece because that looks the best to me. But I'm gonna show you how perfectly it's cooked. Okay, if you can see this, okay, here in the middle, it's completely cooked all the way through. It's nice and steamy, no pink, but it's also very juicy. You can see it dripping. That's what you want your chicken to be like. That's what's gonna taste good. That's gonna be the chicken that you're gonna continue to cook and continue to eat. So also, just so you guys know, this was just like a free range, really high quality chicken breast that we bought at the store earlier today. So generally when cooking chicken, fresh is better. If you can avoid the frozen, that's best. But ultimately just, you know, work with what you've got. Okay. So let's see here. Get my little fork. If you wanted to, you could also drizzle a little bit of that lemon over everything too, if you wanted just a little extra kick. Absolutely delicious. Very good. I've never had that seasoning before. It's delicious. All right, and your kale chips, you literally just eat them like this. Again, I sometimes will put a little drizzle of lemon on top, or if I didn't salt them very much in the beginning, I'll add a little bit of extra salt if you want to. If you're cooking for a crowd, that's a tip that I have. Wait to add the salt until the end, because then everybody can add how much salt they prefer versus how much you might enjoy. All right, so here we go. It's a kale chip. Very delicious. Melts in your mouth. All right, the second half of our kale is finished. Perfectly cooked. Just gonna scoop it out here. I kind of want to show you just, kind of how all of that kale cooked down. And you guys, I mean, when I tell you, you could eat this entire thing and not even feel it. It literally melts in your mouth. So those of you who are having a lot of restriction from your surgery, this might be a really good way to try and get in some veggies, because it's not going to take up a ton of room. It's not going to make you feel overly full. Okay. All right. So that is what the kale ended up as. If you'll remember, it started out as a big old thing like this. So that's kind of how it cooks down. Again, you can split it up into, I would say, maybe either like a third or a half would be a serving, and then combine it with your chicken breast. And that's going to be a really good, satisfying meal that's going to keep you full for a long time. All right, guys, so the next meal that we're going to make is going to be just a steak and asparagus. Super simple. Again, one of those meals that you could cook in under 30 minutes. So this is just 100% grass-fed beef. It's a ribeye beef steak. And we're going to just use some of the seasonings that we have from Salt here in Amarillo. And then we're going to also just do that asparagus. Okay, so part of this meal that we're going to make is going to be just some grilled asparagus. So the first thing you want to do with your asparagus is just go ahead and wash it. We've already done quite a few of these, but I am going to show you. So this is what your asparagus is going to look like after you've washed it. Typically these ends are going to be very grainy or like strands, pretty hard to chew. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to either break off or cut off about the last 1 to 2 inches of that. I tend to cut off closer to maybe about 2 inches, so about right here. Okay, and then you can just toss this, and then this goes back in with the rest of your asparagus. And how we want to season this is we're going to add a little bit of avocado oil to it. Maybe. There we go. Again, you don't have to be shy. Okay, gonna toss that. Okay, and then you're just gonna follow up. You can do a little bit of the pink Himalayan salt again if you want. I actually think that this Lemon Rosemary Sea Salt would be really good as well. So just kind of whatever your choice is. I'm gonna give it a try with this Lemon Rosemary Sea Salt. So I added a little bit of that Lemon Rosemary Sea Salt, and just because I have it over here, I've got a little bit of a lemon. I'm just gonna go ahead and drizzle that on the top as well. Not much, just maybe like a teaspoon or so. Okay, and then just toss it again with your hands, or if you don't like getting messy, toss it with some tongs or a fork or something. There we are. All right, so one of the best tips that I can give you for cooking meat, whenever you get ready to cook it, if you have the chance, if you don't have the chance, no worries, but if you have the time, go ahead and set the meat out, which is what we've done, just to kind of get it at room temperature. Go ahead and set it out for probably 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, and so what we're gonna season it with, again, we're gonna do the avocado oil. Just gonna do a little bit of a drizzle on top. And then what I like to do, just kind of rub that in, trying not to wash my hands here too much, okay? Just turn it over, and then we'll do the same thing. Maybe, there we go. All right, and then we're gonna use a little bit of the garlic granules that we got from Salt. Just gonna sprinkle those a little bit over the top. Can't go wrong with garlic, in my opinion. If you come to my house, you're gonna be getting a lot of garlic in your food. Okay. Then we're gonna do a little bit of just the pink Himalayan salt and then black pepper. Just real simple and easy. A light dusting there. Like I said earlier, you can always go back and add more if you need to, but you can't take away. All right, and this black pepper is the fine black pepper. You can use whichever one you prefer. Some people are more pepper people. I'm not so much, so you'll see I did a pretty light dusting on the pepper. Okay, if you guys are gonna do it in the Ninja Foodie Grill, remember you gotta preheat it. So turn it to the grill function, and then you can just hit this little temperature, the little thermometer button. It'll come up with beef, and you can change, whether you want it to be rare, medium. We're gonna go medium well because we're cooking this for the office and I just don't know everybody's preferences, okay? But I know my preference, which is well done. Don't tell anybody. All right, and then you'll hit start and it'll go ahead and preheat, and then while it's doing that, you can go ahead and get the thermometer in the meat and you just put it in horizontally, just kind of sideways here. Okay, and as soon as that's preheated, we'll pop it in there. All right, so the Ninja grill is ready. It's preheated, so we're gonna go ahead and add the steak. And we're actually just gonna do both the steak and the asparagus together. Okay, so if you've got the one with the thermometer, you just add the thermometer in there as well. So, kind of tuck it in. Okay, we're just gonna add the asparagus on the side. Okay, and then close it and it'll reach its desired temperature and let us know. All right, so it told us to flip. We could flip the steak if you wanted to, if you want those like char lines on both sides. But we're gonna check in on the asparagus. It's actually almost ready, but we're gonna leave it in for just a little bit longer. I'll show you what I mean by almost ready. If you can see this, so it's a little bit brown on the edges. It's starting to get a really bright green color. Really probably only needs like 1 minute, maybe 2 more minutes. Okay, so our steak has cooked to 140 degrees, which would correlate to medium well. So if you wanted yours more done, you could cook it for a little bit longer. If you wanted it less, it would be a little less time. Okay, let's see, let's get the steak out first, because we're actually gonna let it rest. Okay, there we go, there's our steak. By letting it rest, we're allowing that steak to kind of soak up all of those nice juices. And then here on the asparagus, it's cooked perfectly. So this recipe, because you can do it at the same time, you can cook the steak and the asparagus simultaneously. It's really only gonna take you about 15 minutes from the time you prep everything, put it in, and it's done. 15 minutes and you're gonna call it good. Okay, so we're gonna let this rest for about 1 minute and then we'll dig in. Okay, so it's been right at a minute for resting the steak. So I'm just gonna pull this out here. There we go. Okay, and then we're gonna cut into the steak. Okay, we're gonna cut over here first. Okay, and here's our steak. So I would say that's more like a medium than a medium well, but still a really nicely cooked steak. All right, and I'll cut into it, have a bite for you. We're actually gonna add a little bit of butter. This is Kerrygold butter. It's like a grass-fed butter that's really delicious. Gonna add that on top to the rest of the steak. You could also add a little bit onto your asparagus if you wanted. I think I did mine with plenty of avocado oil. Put a little bit of this on top, make it look pretty. All right, we're gonna give this a go. It's super like juicy, lots of flavor. Could probably have a little more salt. And as you'll remember, I didn't add a whole lot of salt in the beginning just because you never know what people are going to like. So add a little bit more salt. I would probably add a little bit more garlic. Just a little sprinkle on top. And then that'll do it. All right, so thanks for watching us today. We kind of cooked two different meals. We did your chicken and kale chips, and then we've done a steak and asparagus. So for those of you just learning to cook, these should be very easy recipes for you to follow. Really not even a recipe, just more so grabbing some ingredients and putting them into the cooker. If you don't have this grill, like I said, you can use an outdoor grill. You could use a cast iron skillet, or you could use your oven as well. Most of the time your oven temperature is going to be between 350 and 400 for everything that we've cooked today. So I hope you get to cooking, and I hope you enjoy. We'll see you next time.